So the key to the unit circle, and we're going to start with just degrees, is it all comes back to reference angles. So here's the idea with reference angles. A reference angle is always measured from the x-axis. So from the x-axis. You're always measuring from the x-axis, and it's the reference angle is how far away from the x-axis. So if from the x-axis, we measure up, this measures 30 degrees up. That's the first thing that you just need to actually memorize, is that that's 30 degrees. These angles are not a big, memorizing these angles is not a big deal. They should be easy. Now, any of these angles, for the reference angles, we're measuring 30 degrees up from the x-axis, or 30 degrees down from the x-axis, the positive x-axis or the negative x-axis. So, if we measure, this is 30 degrees, that's 30 degrees. Now remember, straight to the left, that's 180 degrees. So if we measure 30 degrees up from that, we're now going 180, backing it up 30. So that means this angle over here is 150. Or if we're going down to quadrant 3, we're going 180 degrees plus 30 degrees, which 210. Or we're going just down 30 degrees, which would be negative 30 degrees, or using coterminal angles, add 360 to that, that's 330 degrees. So all of those angles, they all have the same reference angle. They all have a reference angle of 30. They all have a reference angle of 30. That's going to be a big part of what we have in a minute here. Straight up, that would be 90 degrees. Straight down, that's 270. You need to know your axes. You need to know those degrees. All right, using that same reference angle idea, this is 45 degrees. The next angle on your unit circle is 45 degrees. Which means this one over here in quadrant 2 would be 180 minus 45 degrees. So that's 135. Or 180 plus 45 degrees, so that's 225. Or 360 minus 45 degrees, which is 315. They all have the same reference angle. The reference angle is 45 degrees. And then last, we can get our last coordinates, or the last degree measures, just by knowing that this one's 60. Which means over here in quadrant 2, it would be 180 degrees minus 60, because we're backing up 60 degrees. So that's 120. Or 180 degrees plus 60 degrees, which is 240. Or 360, backing it up 60 degrees, that's 300 degrees. There's all your angles. They all come back to reference angles, which is summarized actually on this slide. Quadrant 1 is always going to be your reference angle, 30, 45, or 60. Quadrant 2 will always be 180 degrees minus the reference angle, 30, 45, or 60. Quadrant 3 will always be 180 plus the reference angle for those reasons we just went through. And quadrant 4 will always be 360 minus the reference angle. The reasons we just went through. So summarizing all those degrees real quick, if we just looked at how I color-coded them with all the reference angles, we had one set where these were all the 30-degree reference angles. 30, 150, 210, and 330. Then we had another set of reference angles that was 45, 135, 225, and 315. Those were all the angles that came from 45-degree reference angles. And then from the 60-degree reference angle, we had 60, 120, 240, and 300. Those were all the 60 degrees. The angles that came from the 60-degree reference angle. So you can quickly identify what the reference angle is. These are all the angles that are on the unit circle, besides 90, 180, 270, 360, that sort of stuff. These are all the other angles. And you can quickly identify what reference angle they tie back to, because they all have something in common because of how their subtraction. So the easiest one to observe is the 45-degree reference angle. All the angles on the unit circle that end in a 5 come back to the 45-degree reference angle because they end in a 5. Or they have a 5 in the ones place. However you want to say that. It's a little bit better mathematically. 5 in ones place. So if there's a 5 in the ones place, it comes back to the 45-degree reference angle. The 30 and the 60s, they all end in 0, so that's, can't look at that. But there is a big difference between the 30-degree reference angles and the 60-degree reference angles in the tens place. In the tens place, what's the difference? If it's a 30-degree reference angle, the tens place is odd. And if it's 60-degree reference, the tens place is even. So you can really quickly identify what the reference angle is, whether it's 30, 45, or 60. So here's why that matters. If it's a 60-degree reference angle, we're going to associate that with our index finger on our left hand. So here's a picture of our left hand. We're going to associate it with the index finger. 45, we're going to associate that with our middle finger. And the 30-degree reference angle, we're going to associate that with the ring. Because everything that happens in the unit circle happens in quadrant 1, and then it just repeats over and over again. And your left hand matches up with quadrant 1. Your thumb matches up with the y-axis. Your pinky matches up with the x-axis. Your index finger, middle finger, and ring finger match up there. 5 fingers, 5 lines. So, using your left hand, using the left hand trick, we can get through this unit circle really, really, really easy. So, here's how it works. All you have to do is bend the finger that corresponds to the reference angle. When you bend that finger, the fingers that are not bent are the numerator of the coordinates there. So, for example, if you bend the 60-degree angle, we're left with a thumb, so 1, and then the bent finger even kind of looks like a comma. If you're looking at your hand with the finger bent, it kind of looks like a comma, and then we've got 3 fingers, 1, 3. On the unit circle, the point that goes with 60-degree angle is 1 over 2. You got to remember the over 2 part. And then square root of 3 over 2. There's your unit circle on your left hand. If you bend your middle finger, that's your comma. And then we've got 2 fingers and 2 fingers. On the unit circle, the coordinates that go with 45 are root 2 over 2, root 2 over 2. If you bend your ring finger, you've got 3 fingers, comma, 1 finger. So that's 3, comma, 1. Square root of 3 over 2, comma, 1 over 2. You've got the entire unit circle right there. So we're going to fill that in. 30-degree angle, we just said it. When you bend the 30 degree, that's your ring finger. So that's square root of 3 over 2, 1 over 2. When you bend your middle finger, you get 2 and 2. So it's square root of 2 over 2, square root of 2 over 2. And then when you bend your index finger, your pointer finger, left with 1 and a 3, 1 comma 3, you get 1 over 2, square root of 3 over 2. That's quadrant 1 of your unit circle. Now, I've been color coding my unit circle here so that you can see the blue matches up. All the reference angles are gonna, like 150, 210, they all come back to a 30-degree reference angle. So you'd always bend your ring finger for a 30-degree reference angle. Even if it's 150 degrees, you bend your ring finger because that's a 30-degree reference angle. So the big idea is getting your reference angle. 150 degrees is a 30-degree reference, which means you bend your ring finger and you get those same coordinates. You get square root of 3 over 2, 1 over 2. Except we're over here in quadrant 2, which goes left and up. Left is negative, up is positive. Quadrant 2 is always going to be negative, comma, positive. 45 degrees, left and up. So that's going to be negative, comma, positive. But it's a 45-degree reference because it ends in a 5. That's negative root 2 over 2, positive root 2 over 2. And for 120, that's your pointer finger, your index finger, 60-degree reference angle. So it's negative 1 over 2, positive root 3 over 2. So we can see the green ones, the 45-degree reference angles, they're all going to be root 2 over 2. So even these down here, this is root 2 over 2 and root 2 over 2. Except this is quadrant 3. Quadrant 3 is negative, negative, so they're both negative. The 240 is a 60-degree reference. 60-degree reference, you bend your pointer finger. And you get 1, comma 3. And they're both negative because we're in quadrant 3. 210 was a 30-degree reference angle, so that's your your ring finger. So it's 3, 1 over 2 over 2, both negative because we're in quadrant 3. Same thing for quadrant 4. Reference angle for 300, that is your 60-degree reference, which means pointer finger, which means 1, comma 3 over 2 over 2. And since we're in quadrant 4, it's a positive x and a negative y. It's a positive x and a negative y. 45, it's root 2 over 2. Both of them. This is a 45-degree reference. Middle finger. Root 2 over 2. Root 2 over 2. Positive, negative, because we're in quadrant 4. And then last, we have 330. That's a 30-degree reference, which is your ring finger, which is 3, 1. So the coordinate's 3, 1. Square root of 3 over 2, 1 over 2, positive, negative, because we're in quadrant 4. The only thing that we didn't include is the actual axes, which those should be pretty basic for you, pretty easy. This is going to the right. It goes to the right, so it's 1, 0. Because it's only going to the right. This coordinate is only going straight up. Straight up means the x coordinate 0, the y coordinate's 1. To the left, that's negative 1, up and down 0. And then straight down, that's left and right 0, down 1. There's your entire unit circle for degrees. Degrees is actually way harder than radians for this trick, but it's still easy. Remember, this tells you what quadrant you're in. Your reference angle, if it's just the reference angle, it's in quadrant 1. If it's 180 minus the reference angle tells you which finger to bend. And the degree is going to tell you if you're in quadrant 2, 3, 4, whatever. It's all there. If you're in quadrant 2, you have to remember it's negative positive because you're going left and up. Quadrant 3 is negative negative. Quadrant 4 is positive negative. Quadrant 1 is obviously all positive. So we can actually summarize all this with this little chart right here. On those coordinates, in quadrant 1, it's always going to be positive, positive. The rule for the angle is just the reference angle. And the angles that you'll get in quadrant 1 are 30, 45, and 60. In quadrant 2, it's a negative and a positive. 180 minus the reference angle for quadrant 2. So you get 180 minus 30, 180 minus 45, and 180 minus 60. You get your angles. But it all comes back to your reference angle. In quadrant 3, it's negative negative. It's 180 degrees plus the reference angle. 180 plus 30, 180 plus 45, and 180 plus 60. And then quadrant 4 is positive x, negative y. You do 360 degrees minus the reference angle. So you get 360 minus 30, it's 330. 360 minus 45, and 360 minus 60. So for each of these, the reference angles went vertical. Like we mentioned before, we had the 30-degree reference angle, the 45-degree reference angle, the 60-degree reference angle. With the 30-degree reference angle, so for all of these, you'd bend your ring finger. For the 45-degree reference angle, you bend your middle finger. And then for 60-degree reference angles, you bend your index finger, and that tells you your coordinate. And when you do that, when you bend your ring finger, you've got 3, 1, square root of 3 over 2, 1 over 2. When you bend your middle finger, you've got 2, 2, square root of 2 over 2, square root of 2 over 2. And when you bend your index finger, you got 1, 3. 1, 3. 1 over 2, square root of 3 over 2.